What if the wildest films of early Hollywood were erased, not by time, but by fear? Before 1934, the screen was untamed, filled with daring stories of power greed and forbidden desire. Then the code arrived, and silence fell. These are the pre-code films so scandalous they were recut, censored, and buried. Their fragments remain like ghosts of a Hollywood that once dared to tell the truth. Number 16. Red-Headed Woman, 1932. When Red-Headed Woman hit theaters, it sent shockwaves through America. Jean Harlow exploded onto the screen as Lil Andrews, a secretary who schemes, manipulates, and seduces her way from poverty to luxury. The movie's unapologetic tone left critics gasping. Lil was not punished for her ambition. She triumphed. In an age that demanded women stay obedient, that was revolutionary. MGM executives knew they had unleashed something dangerous. The studio prepared alternate cuts for nervous regional censors. Lines suggesting female independence were scrubbed or softened. Even a glimpse of Harlow's confident grin could trigger outrage. Religious groups called the movie immoral. Newspapers printed editorials demanding Hollywood clean itself up. When the Hays Code tightened its grip 2 years later, Red-Headed Woman was one of the first titles recalled and sanitized for reissue. The new version stripped away its bite-reducing Lil's ruthless rise to a moral lesson. But history could not erase what audiences had seen. Today, film historians view Red-Headed Woman as a statement of defiance, a mirror of female power in an age terrified of it. Beneath the glitz, it whispered a dangerous truth, that a woman's hunger for control was never the problem. The world's fear of it was. Number 15. Babyface, 1933. Barbara Stanwyck's performance in Babyface remains one of the boldest in Hollywood history. She plays Lily Powers, a woman who flees a steel-town life of abuse and climbs the skyscrapers of New York with cunning and courage. The movie unfolds like a fever dream of ambition. Each floor she conquers, another man underestimates her and pays the price. Audiences were stunned by its raw energy. Critics called it immoral. Civic boards demanded cuts. Warner Brothers reluctantly trimmed scenes and added a forced ending where Lily renounces her ambition and accepts punishment. Yet the original version still played in select markets, stirring whispers of brilliance and rebellion. After 1934, the film was recalled and heavily censored. The original master negative disappeared into studio vaults. For half a century, only the altered version survived, a tamed relic of a once fearless story. Then, in the 1980s, archivists discovered an uncut nitrate print in the Library of Congress. When shown to modern viewers, it electrified scholars. Suddenly, the meaning changed completely. Lily was not immoral. She was modern, refusing to accept a world built on male hypocrisy. Babyface stands today as proof that censorship is not preservation. It is fear disguised as morality. Number 14. Tarzan and His Mate, 1934. When MGM released Tarzan and His Mate, it promised exotic adventure and delivered controversy. Johnny Weissmuller and Maureen O'Sullivan returned as the wild couple living free in the African jungle, but this time, the romance was unfiltered. The movie celebrated nature, freedom, and connection, but the guardians of decency saw scandal, a stunning underwater scene showing Tarzan and Jane swimming together in the nude sparked nationwide outrage. Religious organizations condemned it as sinful. Theaters in conservative states refused to screen it. MGM executives panicked, cutting several minutes of footage before general release. When the Hays Code became mandatory that same year, the movie was cited as Exhibit A in congressional arguments for stricter censorship. Despite the uproar, audiences loved it. The film broke box office records, proving that people craved something untamed. Yet, the full version vanished. For decades, television prints and reissues used the censored edit, erasing the artistry and sensuality that had once defined it. In the 1980s, historians unearthed the original underwater sequence and restored it. The rediscovered footage revealed a poetic depiction of harmony between humans and nature. Not obscenity, but innocence. Tarzan and His Mate remains a reminder of how moral panic can blind art to its own beauty. It is the jungle movie that dared to show that love itself could be wild. Number 13. The Story of Temple Drake, 1933. Few films rattled Hollywood's conscience like The Story of Temple Drake. Based on William Faulkner's controversial novel Sanctuary, it followed a wealthy Southern girl whose life spirals into chaos after a violent encounter that forces her into the criminal underworld. The story was grim, unflinching, and morally complex, a portrait of innocence shattered and justice corrupted. When Paramount released it, the backlash was instant. Critics were horrified not only by the subject matter, but by the way it refused to moralize. Temple was not the fallen angel archetype Hollywood preferred. She was human, broken yet defiant. Southern censorship boards banned it outright. Church groups labeled it the end of American cinema's decency. Paramount executives quickly realized they had gone too far for the new moral climate. When the Hays Code took full control in 1934, the movie was one of the first pulled from circulation. For decades, it was impossible to see outside private collections. Even the studio suppressed reissues fearing federal attention. But film historians later rediscovered it and found something extraordinary. A pre-code masterpiece that dared to portray trauma with honesty. Temple Drake was not about corruption, but about survival. Its raw humanity terrified those who believed movies should comfort rather than confront. Today, it stands as a reminder of what happens when courage in storytelling collides with fear of truth. Number 12. Baby, Take a Bow, 1934. At first glance, Baby Take a Bow seemed harmless, a Shirley Temple musical about innocence and redemption. But beneath its cheerful title lay a tale that clashed with the code's moral boundaries. Shirley played the daughter of an ex-convict trying to rebuild his life. The story humanized criminals, portrayed law enforcement as flawed, and suggested that virtue could exist outside authority. That message infuriated the censors. The newly empowered Production Code Administration demanded changes before release. Fox reluctantly agreed. Entire dialogue exchanges were rewritten. Scenes that hinted at moral ambiguity vanished. When the movie finally premiered, it was a softer, safer version of what had been conceived. Behind the camera, director Harry Lockman fought to keep his vision alive. He believed cinema should reflect life's imperfections, not hide them. The studio ignored him. Still, audiences adored Shirley Temple, and the film became a hit. But its edges had been sanded down. Years later, the original shooting script surfaced, showing how radical the movie once was. The restored text revealed a bold defense of forgiveness and reform, a theme far too advanced for the moral overseers of 1934. Baby Take a Bow endures not for its cuteness, but for its defiance, hidden behind a child's smile. Number 11. Island of Lost Souls, 1932. Long before modern horror blurred morality, there was Island of Lost Souls. Adapted from H.G. Wells's The Island of Dr. Moreau, it pushed 1930s audiences into nightmare territory. Charles Laughton played Dr. Moreau, a scientist creating human-animal hybrids on a remote island. The film's atmosphere was feverish, claustrophobic, and disturbingly sensual. When it premiered, audiences recoiled. British censors banned it immediately. American cities demanded severe edits. Paramount received hundreds of letters calling it blasphemous. Religious leaders denounced it for playing God and depicting cruelty without punishment. The studio trimmed entire scenes of Moreau's experiments and removed lines about evolution that offended conservative groups. The chaos behind the scenes was equally intense. Laughton's performance was so unsettling, crew members avoided eye contact during filming. The set was a jungle of heat and dread. Yet despite the turmoil, the movie's power was undeniable. Critics called it unholy brilliance. After 1934, it was withdrawn from circulation, deemed unfit for moral audiences. For decades, it existed only as rumor and fragments until collectors pieced together the original cut in the late 20th century. Modern viewers finally saw its genius, a grotesque allegory about science, religion, and cruelty. Island of Lost Souls remains one of the most disturbing yet visionary films ever made. It showed what happens when humanity fears its own reflection, and when censorship tries to bury the mirror. Number 10. Blonde Venus, 1932. Marlene Dietrich was already an icon when she took on Blonde Venus, but this film pushed her mystique into forbidden territory. Directed by Josef von Sternberg, it told the story of a devoted wife who becomes a nightclub performer to save her sick husband. What followed was not the sentimental melodrama audiences expected, but a dangerous descent into desire, power, and survival. When Dietrich appeared on screen draped in feathers, singing hot voodoo, audiences gasped. Some applauded her boldness, others left theaters in disgust. The movie blurred the line between sacrifice and self-liberation, and that terrified moralists. Religious groups called for boycotts. Studio executives received letters claiming the movie glorified sin. Behind the scenes, Sternberg fought every demand for censorship. He refused to portray his heroine as fallen, insisting she was a woman forced to live by her own rules. The fight nearly destroyed his career. When the production code tightened 2 years later, Blonde Venus was reissued in a mutilated form with major scenes deleted. Even the original ending, where Dietrich's character chose independence, was softened into submission. Modern restorations reveal how fearless it once was. Beyond the glitter and shadows, it was a story about motherhood, survival, and a woman's right to make choices that men deemed immoral. Today, Blonde Venus stands as both a masterpiece and a martyr, proof that moral panic can silence the most complex truths about love and strength. Number 9. The Public Enemy, 1931. Before censorship locked Hollywood's imagination, The Public Enemy exploded like dynamite. James Cagney's portrayal of gangster Tom Powers redefined screen violence. He was not a cartoon villain, he was charming, reckless, and terrifyingly real. The infamous grapefruit scene where he smashes a fruit into Mae Clarke's face became one of cinema's most shocking moments. Audiences were riveted, but critics panicked. Newspapers warned that crime pictures were corrupting the youth. The film's raw depiction of urban poverty and moral decay hit too close to home during the Great Depression. City councils threatened bans. Warner Brothers scrambled to create alternate endings showing criminals punished by death, satisfying the code's demand that evil must never triumph. Behind the curtain, studio censors removed sequences showing bootlegging brutality and police corruption. But nothing could dull Cagney's performance. It was pure lightning. After 1934, the movie was re-edited again for television and reissue. Dialogue about government hypocrisy vanished. Only decades later did film archivists restore the missing footage, revealing its original grit. The Public Enemy did more than define the gangster genre. It forced Hollywood to confront reality. It showed how crime was born not from evil but from desperation. It was a mirror that censors smashed because they feared what it reflected. Number 8. Scarface, 1932. If one movie symbolized the pre-code era's audacity, it was Scarface. Howard Hawks directed and Howard Hughes produced this explosive story inspired by the rise of Al Capone. Paul Mooney's portrayal of Tony Camonte was mesmerizing, a ruthless criminal whose thirst for power consumed everyone around him. From the opening gunfight to the chilling finale, Scarface was pure chaos and moral ambiguity. Critics called it too violent for civilized society. The Chicago Censorship Board banned it entirely, fearing riots. Religious organizations condemned it for glorifying gangsters. Hughes refused to bow. He fought state by state for the film's release, even writing editorials defending artistic freedom. Censors demanded multiple endings, one showing Tony arrested, another showing his corpse displayed as a warning. Hughes secretly distributed both versions to different markets, depending on their tolerance. The movie became an underground sensation while moral crusaders fumed. When the Hays Code took over 2 years later, Scarface became a symbol of everything Hollywood promised never to do again. Yet its legend only grew. Directors from Brian De Palma to Martin Scorsese later cited it as a blueprint for cinematic rebellion. Scarface was not about violence. It was about the American hunger for power and recognition. That hunger frightened censors more than any bullet ever could. Number 7. She Done Him Wrong, 1933. Mae West was not just a star, she was a storm that crashed through Hollywood's polite walls. She Done Him Wrong captured everything the new moral gatekeepers feared: wit, confidence, and a woman who refused to apologize for desire or control. Set in the rough saloons of the Bowery, the story followed Lady Lou, a singer, who played men like a deck of cards and always came out on top. Audiences loved it. Critics were divided. Some called it art, others called it wickedness. What shocked people most was not the story, but the attitude. West never acted ashamed. She was powerful, playful, and unstoppable. That alone was enough to send the censors into panic mode. When the production code arrived in 1934, She Done Him Wrong was one of the first films targeted for reissue cuts. Dialogue that hinted at double meanings was erased, entire lines vanished from prints. The famous closing line, where West flirted with Cary Grant, was rewritten for television decades later. Yet the essence could not be erased. Behind the scenes, Paramount executives begged West to tone down her next scripts. She refused. The backlash led to her virtual exile from film for years, but her legend only grew. Today, the movie is remembered as the film that made Mae West immortal and made Hollywood terrified of its own shadow. It proved that laughter can be more subversive than scandal, and that a single woman with a wink could shake an empire. Number 6. Freaks, 1932. Todd Browning's Freaks remains one of the most shocking films ever made, not for gore, but for empathy. Set in a circus sideshow, it told the story of performers with physical deformities who face betrayal from a cruel trapeze artist and her strongman lover. Instead of monsters, Browning showed humanity, tenderness, and community. That vision horrified studio heads more than any horror film could. MGM executives panicked after test screenings. Audiences fainted, walked out, and demanded refunds. Critics called it grotesque. Religious groups labeled it an insult to human dignity. The studio slashed the movie from 90 minutes to barely 60, removing key scenes that gave context and compassion. What remained was a ghost of its true form. In 1934, when the code was enforced, Freaks was banned in several countries, including the United Kingdom, for more than 30 years. MGM locked away the negatives, ashamed of what they had financed. Todd Browning's career never recovered, yet time transformed it. In the 1960s, it was rediscovered by art house audiences who saw its defiance of beauty norms as revolutionary. Today, it stands as one of the most fearless acts of empathy ever captured on film. Freaks was never about horror. It was about how cruelty hides behind civility and how compassion can exist where society sees none. Number 5. Trouble in Paradise, 1932. Ernst Lubitsch was known for elegance, but Trouble in Paradise proved elegance could also be dangerous. The story followed two charming thieves who fall in love while conning a wealthy perfume heiress. It was playful, witty, and morally ambiguous, everything the production code would soon destroy. When it premiered, audiences adored its sophistication. The dialogue sparkled, the tone was mischievous, and the chemistry between Miriam Hopkins, Herbert Marshall, and Kay Francis was electric. Yet the film dared to present love and theft as equal arts. That was unforgivable to the moral watchdogs of 1934. When the code became law, the movie was pulled from circulation and banned from reissue for nearly 2 decades. Paramount was ordered to make no further films that celebrated criminal charm or unpunished deceit. For years, only censored prints survived, and its daring humor vanished from public view. Behind the camera, Lubitsch defended his art as satire, not sin. His fight with studio censors became legendary, inspiring future filmmakers to hide their rebellion inside elegance. When the movie resurfaced after the code era, it was hailed as a lost masterpiece. Today, Trouble in Paradise stands as proof that laughter can be revolutionary. Beneath its polite sparkle, it carried a whisper of rebellion, an elegant middle finger to moral hypocrisy disguised as sophistication. Number 4. Red Dust, 1930. 2. Before censorship drained the heat from Hollywood, red dust blazed across the screen like fire. Clark Gable and Jean Harlow lit up the jungle in a tale of lust, jealousy, and survival set on a rubber plantation in French Indochina. Gable played a rugged overseer hardened by the wilderness, while Harlow's character arrived as chaos itself, wild, defiant, and untamed. Audiences were hypnotized. Critics praised the chemistry, but moralists were appalled. The story dared to show relationships that broke every rule of polite society. The Catholic Legion of Decency condemned it as dangerous, and MGM scrambled to defend its reputation. When the code took power, the film was banned from reissue and locked away until a sanitized remake called Mogambo appeared in the 1950s. Behind the camera, director Victor Fleming encouraged authenticity. The heat, humidity, and endless rain made filming miserable. Harlow nearly collapsed during production but refused to quit. Her laughter became the movie's heartbeat. Yet once the censors struck, the film's sensual power was hidden behind euphemism. Years later, when uncut prints resurfaced, scholars rediscovered its brilliance. Red Dust was not about sin, but about survival in a world where morality evaporates under the tropical sun. It exposed the hypocrisy of civilization itself. The jungle did not judge, only humans did. Today, Red Dust stands as a monument to unfiltered Hollywood passion. It remains proof that desire can be art, and that sometimes the most forbidden stories are the truest ones. Number 3. Design for Living, 1933. Ernst Lubitsch returned once again to outwit Hollywood censors with Design for Living. Adapted from a Noel Coward play, it followed two struggling artists and the woman who loves them both. It was clever, romantic, and completely scandalous for its time. There were no villains, no punishment, no moral lesson, just three adults negotiating desire with honesty. Audiences were stunned, some laughed, others gasped. The story's suggestion of equal affection between three people shattered the code's sacred law of monogamy. Religious leaders condemned it. Theaters in the Midwest refused to screen it. Studio executives received letters accusing them of corrupting American virtue. Lubitsch defended the film as satire about freedom and restraint. He argued that life itself rarely fit moral categories. But by 1934, the production code made its message illegal. The film was pulled from distribution and could not be shown again until after World War II. Even then, the studio reissued it in a mutilated version, cutting entire scenes of intimacy and philosophy. Behind the scenes, actors Frederick March, Miriam Hopkins, and Gary Cooper laughed off the panic. They knew they were making something ahead of its time. For decades, Design for Living was dismissed as a curiosity, but modern critics call it one of Lubitsch's boldest works. The movie's real scandal was not its love triangle, but its courage to treat passion as something human rather than shameful. It remains a quiet anthem for freedom disguised as comedy. Number 2. The Sign of the Cross, 1932. When Cecil B. DeMille made The Sign of the Cross, he set out to shock audiences and succeeded beyond belief. Set in ancient Rome, it mixed faith spectacle and forbidden pleasure in ways no film had dared before. Colosseums burned, martyrs prayed, and lavish feasts turned into visions of decadence. DeMille's Rome looked like a warning and a temptation all at once. Audiences were divided. Some called it genius, others called it blasphemy. Church leaders accused DeMille of mocking Christianity, while theatergoers packed cinemas to see what the controversy was about. The film contained scenes of implied violence and desire that scandalized conservative America. Lions devoured prisoners, while nobles toasted to cruelty. When the Hays Code was enforced, the Sign of the Cross became a target. Paramount was ordered to cut minutes of footage for every reissue, including a now legendary sequence where Claudette Colbert bathed in milk while mocking virtue. DeMille protested, but lost. The censored version replaced the raw power of ancient corruption with pious simplicity. Behind the camera, DeMille relished the chaos. He argued that faith without temptation was meaningless. His boldness nearly cost him his reputation, but history proved him right. The film's imagery inspired countless biblical epics that followed, though none matched its fearless tone. The Sign of the Cross remains both sacred and profane. It revealed that morality often hides behind fear, and that true faith survives not in purity, but in struggle. Number 1. Cleopatra, 1934. Before Hollywood became timid about desire and danger, Cleopatra ruled the screen with audacity. Directed by Cecil B. DeMille and starring Claudette Colbert, this was not the somber historical epic audiences expected. It was a fever dream of power, intrigue, and temptation. Colbert's Cleopatra was no victim of empire. She was its equal. She seduced Rome with intelligence and ruled Egypt through strategy. Her power was sensual, but also political, and that terrified the censors. When the movie premiered, it caused a sensation. The sets shimmered with gold and shadow, the costumes barely met decency standards, and the dialogue burned with suggestion. Church groups declared it a disgrace. Newspapers demanded the film be pulled from theaters. Yet audiences flocked to see it. Cleopatra broke box office records and pushed DeMille's reputation as the master of spectacle to new heights. Then came the crackdown. When the production code went into full effect later that same year, Paramount was forced to butcher its own hit. Dozens of lines were cut, and scenes trimmed to hide passion under moral restraint. Even Colbert's shimmering costumes were reshot for later reissues. The movie that once embodied cinematic freedom became a warning to every director who dared to challenge the new order. Behind the scenes, DeMille raged at the interference. He believed Cleopatra was history seen through the lens of human emotion, not indecency. His frustration echoed through the rest of his career. By the time he made his next biblical epics, the fire was still there, but the cage had grown tighter. Today, Cleopatra stands as the closing chapter of the pre-code era. It marks the final gasp of a Hollywood unafraid to portray passion, power, and politics as intertwined forces. Its glittering temples and defiant queen remind us that art once lived without permission. Before the scissors of censorship sliced through celluloid, these films dared to tell the truth about power and desire. They were not obscene. They were honest. Their rebellion helped shape everything that followed. Which of these forbidden classics would you bring back uncut? Let your voice be heard. Like, share, and comment to keep their memory alive.